Danger of Death in New York City, a true crime story Part 2. As Kevin lay on the sidewalk, struggling to stay conscious, he knew he had to make a decision. He could lay there and hope for help to arrive, or he could try to get up and find help on his own. An urgent choice had to be made. It hit him like a ton of bricks. He could die on the street in New York City alone. His life was slipping away every second that he was bleeding out. Kevin knew he couldn't just lay there and wait for someone to come to his aid. With all the strength he could muster, Kevin managed to lift himself up off the ground. He was dizzy and disoriented, but he knew he had to keep moving. He stumbled down the street, trying to stay on his feet. He could feel the blood pulsing from his chest, and he knew he was losing blood rapidly. The reality of the moment slapped him in the face. He had to find help fast. As he traversed down the street, crashing into obstacles with people scattering in horror, Kevin could see the lights of his bar in the distance. It seemed like an impossible journey, but he knew he had to keep moving forward. His friends would help him there for sure. He focused on the sound of his own footsteps, trying to block out the pain and the fear. He was determined to make it to the bar, even if it took his last shallow breath. With great confusion, Kevin staggered towards the doors of his bar, and shook the outer door pleading for help. He knew he had to find a way to get inside. Everything was beginning to dim around him. He could feel himself getting disoriented and weak. The doors were locked, and he didn't have his keys with him. He could see the lights inside and hear the bass of the jukebox. His friends and co-workers were just a few feet away, but he couldn't get to them. In a feat of desperation, Kevin smashed his hand through the French glass door, shattering the glass and creating a hole big enough for him to get his hand through and unlock the deadbolt lock of the outer door. He pulled open the inner door and stumbled inside, barely able to stay on his feet. At first, everyone in the bar thought Kevin was pranking them. He was covered in blood and looked like he had been in some kind of accident, but Kevin was known for his sense of humor and his love of practical jokes. They all laughed and assumed he was just trying to get a rise out of them. He heard his co-worker Devon exclaim, "Screw you, nobody is falling for your warped sense of humor this time, cut the crap and have a drink." But as Kevin collapsed on the floor, they realized this was no practical joke. As Kevin fell to the bar floor, the last thing that he heard was a blood-curdling female scream. "This is real, this is real." Kevin's friends rushed to his side and saw the extent of his injuries. His friend Hal, a former firefighter, was the first to take action. He immediately started administering first aid, applying pressure to the wound and elevating his legs, trying to stop the bleeding and stabilize Kevin's condition. The police were called and arrived in just a few minutes. Kevin was in and out of consciousness during those minutes. For what seemed like an eternity, Kevin was not aware of the panic around him. Instead, he felt like he was submerged in the warmest, most comfortable place he had ever been. There was calm. Kevin felt a serene peace around him. He felt love and kindness despite the chaos happening in the bar around him. The first officer to arrive on the scene was Officer Chulo. He knelt down beside Kevin and started talking to him, as his friend Hal applied pressure to the bleeding wound in his chest. Kevin was thrust from the warm, loving place back into the frenetic scene in the bar. Officer Chulo was desperately trying to keep him conscious. Kevin looked at the officer and noticed the sleeve of tattoos on his forearm and his hair tied into a ponytail. Kevin, gasping for air, said, "Am I going to die?" "You're not going to die," Chulo said repeatedly. "We're going to get you to the hospital and get you the help you need." Kevin could feel himself slipping in and out of consciousness. He found himself in that calm, peaceful place again, which seemed even more calm and safe this time. He felt buoyant and carefree in this place. It was as if he had jumped from a cliff and was submerged deeply in this clear, warm solution that was the perfect temperature. He could see the surface above him. Yet he had no need or desire to reach the surface for air. He was submerged, but he could see clearly, yet the surface seemed several hundred feet away with a bright light that seemed to be warming his surroundings. This is a beautiful place. How did I get here? He could faintly hear his name being called repeatedly, and he felt a hand inside of his hand. Suddenly, Kevin knew he was in serious trouble, and that he didn't want to die, but wherever he was before seemed so peaceful, so safe. Kevin wanted to go back to the warm, safe place again. He clutched onto Officer Chulo's hand and begged him not to let him go. "Please don't let me die," he said, his voice barely audible. "I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to die." End of Part 2. Thanks for watching. Part 3 coming soon.